Hi everyone. Welcome Brian.
Thanks, Tara. Good to be here. Look forward to this fun and interactive lunch session upcoming.
Absolutely. We do have quite a few people registered for this webinar, I think a couple of hundred or so. So we might just give people a minute or two just to dial in and get themselves sorted.
Yeah, good stuff. I always start when we do these webinars of, in the chat, we're going to make this an interactive session. So throw in your name, your company and location where you're dialing in from today, and maybe what's for lunch if that's relevant, if it's taking your lunch break as well. So yeah, look forward to providing lots of value for this session upcoming as we get into it shortly. Myself, I'm
Right.
based in Melbourne. It's cold today, and look forward to sharing some insights as we sort of really get going into this session around how partnerships can complement sales and using great tools like Firmable as we get going along.
So what are you having for lunch then, Brian?
For me, I've got a wrap after this session to follow, and then I'm heading back into the city for this afternoon. So that's me.
Looks like someone's having prawn fettuccine in,
Oh,
in the
wait.
chat. So that's a lot fancier than my planned lunch for today, that's for sure.
Yeah. Good to see you here, Haley. And Abby, thanks for coming. Still full from brekkie. Shuba, good to see you. Oh yeah, the Kiwis, lunch has come and gone. It's already afternoon for them. So
Of course.
yeah,
Yeah, we've got people dialing in from all over Australia, New Zealand, and yeah, across a few time zones, which is great. Hopefully a bit warmer in some other places than it was in Melbourne this morning.
yeah, really.
So for those just tuning in, we're just giving people a moment to dial in and get sorted, and we'll get going in just a minute. But yeah, encourage everyone to get involved with the chat. Share your name, where you're from, and yeah, Brian's suggestion, what you're having for lunch today.
Yeah. And another one would be like, what's the role of partnerships for your organization today, which I
Mm.
think will help us make sure this session is really contextual. So, what does that look like? What does that mean for your business? What does partnerships deliver today, or what do you want it to be? We'll be as we go through this session, we'll be drawing in some insights from the audience, and we've got Jane in the background who's going to be moderating for us. So let's keep the conversations going.
Absolutely. Um, so we're a couple of minutes past now, so we might get going. So yeah, welcome again, everyone. So I'm Tara from Firmable, the Chief Revenue Officer here. We've got Bryan Williams, super excited to have him on this webinar. So besides being a key driver in arguably one of the, developing one of the best, partnerships go-to-market models in Australia for Xero. He's also giving advice to lots of companies at Hockey Stick Advisory. And I guess, I've known Brian for what, a year or so now. And you just have that amazing superpower and just been an unbelievable connector. So super excited, I guess, to have you here with a big audience to kind of share some tips for how to best engage with partners and how to give value, how to get value from partners, and some practical tips along the way as well.
Thanks, Tara. Yeah, it's good to be, and I'll look forward to getting into it. And if I can start off with my origin story, early in my career, I found myself as doing the classic Aussie thing of heading to Europe and being a backpacker and seeing the world and all those things. And for 2.5 years, I worked in an outbound sales role, which I think is relevant for a lot of this audience. So, across roles in Frankfurt, Germany, Luxembourg, and the Middle East, my role was to generate net new sales for financial advisors. So wherever expats were set up, and people typically got more money, and how could they go and chase net new business? And so this was an era where you would either be given like a spreadsheet data or a database, and then away you go. And for the first sort of 6 months of call that apprenticeship into outbound sales, it was a lot of case of a lot of cold calling on the phone, getting access to the clients you want to go after, and how to go about it. And what I discovered through that process of I went deep on referrals, and what I realized was rather than make 100, 200 calls a day, if I was able to generate referrals through existing clients, pipeline, and lost business, I was able to fill a pipeline of qualified leads, which would lead into highly qualified business deals, which would flow down. So on the back of that, I sort of had the light bulb moment of the power of what partnerships could be. And in that instance, it was referral partnerships. And in setting up Hockey Stick a few years later, like 3 years ago now, which is crazy to say, was on the genesis of seeing so many companies wanted to partner Xero, where I led the ecosystem there over a period of time. And so I think as we get into it and some of the data we'll present today, I think it can really be an additive to the sales motions within your companies, and we'll share some examples moving through. But with that, Tara, let's just kick off with setting the scene here, and then we can get into some of the content.
Sounds good. Yeah. So really just a bit of housekeeping for everyone. So we will record this session and circulate it to those attending or those who miss out following. But we are going to try to have an actively engaged session here. We've got some polls and we'll be asking some questions throughout. So encourage everybody to stay on and get involved in the chats and the Q&A section as well. So feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation, and we've got some time at the end for, to try to answer some of those and maybe some along the way as well. So yeah, just encourage everyone to get involved and just actively think about kind of some of the practical tips you can take away and apply to your own businesses from tomorrow.
Thanks, Tara.
So yeah, over to you, Bryan.
Alrighty, thank you. Alrighty, so the main problem that we're looking to solve is, despite good intentions, most partnerships remain ineffective. It's often started from the CEO to leadership team know some companies, or they see some big hero halo logo, and they're like, oh, if only we could get a fire hose of customers from them, that would be great. It would fill the revenue gap we've got within our business, or help us get to a Series B, or unlock the next stage of growth. And so there's this real hope and dreams of what partnerships can deliver. But in reality, it doesn't always work that way. And so for the last 3 years, we've been working with B2B tech companies around how do you build partnership capabilities with the likes of Haley from Easy Agiles on the call, and a bunch of others that I see in familiar names, which is great, is how do you get from A to B, or turn partnerships into a growth engine and build that capabilities alongside your go-to-market motions. And in preparation for today's call, Tara and I were chatting last week of like, well, what is the role of partnerships? What is the impact of partnerships? And I'll spend a bit of time on this one because this is from Pavilion Report from the US, which is a global revenue community. And as per this one here, across their portfolio, the pipeline of leads from partnerships is often a little bit smaller, and the outbound motions is absolutely underway as a traditional go-to-market. Obviously, inbound, which HubSpot's pushed so hard to realize. However, as an efficient growth driver, partnerships typically convert more. So if we get less leads, but it's actually more revenue coming from because they're more qualified, right? If you picture right now where your last holiday, the cafe you went to, recommendations of where you're going, it's probably from someone in your trusted network today of where that's come about. So the conversation when we're having with C-suite is like, how can we do more of this, right? And Tara, when we sort of did some work last year at Firmable, was like, oh, what could partnerships deliver for Firmable? So maybe over Tara to you, just to provide a bit of a snapshot of around how Firmable is thinking about partnerships as a growth drive today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our primary channels are a mix of partnerships, outbound motion, which we of course use Firmable as part of that mix, and then also inbound as well. So we're kind of actually not dissimilar from that chart. So as far as pipe gen goes, partnerships is bringing in probably about 5 to 10% of our pipeline, but it's converting at a much higher rate. So the actual impact on revenue is about 15 to 20% of our ARR at the moment. Now, we're still early in our journey, but you can see just the upside of partnerships and the increased conversion rate, which on a month-to-month basis is up to 70% conversion from opportunity to closed won. And it's because people are leveraging their trusted advisors to work out, well, who should I be talking to? What tools should I be using? That kind of stuff. So yeah, we're seeing it as a really valuable channel for us even early on.
Yeah, awesome. And like you think about that practically, we do some work with New Zealand government, and I spoke to some of their advisors yesterday, and they said, "Oh, thanks to the introduction of Firmable, a bunch of our portfolio have done it." And so that 70% stat, I love to hear, Tara, because ahead of me providing an introduction to Firmable, I've already sort of validated. They're like, "Hey, we want to recruit more partners, but we need to know who they are and how we can contact them." And I say, "Oh, great,
Mhm.
use Firmable." And if they haven't heard of it, then the quality of that when I pass through to your sales team, it's a very easy, extremely far down the funnel conversation. It's like, well, how do we get started? What's the mechanics to get going? And
Mhm.
um, I haven't included today, but we talk a lot around OPM, which is other people's money, right? And if Firmble's got a big army of people out there who know who you are and can advocate for you, then that's going to make your sales team pretty happy to do it,
Mhm.
right? And for the year ahead was like, well, once again, it's like, well, let's get more of these in the funnel because we know they're converting at 70%.
Yep. Brian, I think people are just having trouble seeing the actual numbers here. So looking to see what the contribution is of partners. So here
Yeah,
on the left, I think it says, yeah, pipeline contribution is 10%
yeah, that's
for
right.
partners, but can have an impact of, is it 30% on revenue?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it probably should be I wanted to get these ones together, but yeah, good question, Alex. It's 30% is the average of revenue which partnerships is actually delivering from this benchmark study from Pavilion from last year. So, in other reports and benchmark data we see in market, about 25 to 30% is usually the benchmark of what revenue closed businesses driven from partnerships today. So when we're talking to C-suite and leaders, they're looking at, right, well, are we at 10%? Are we at 20%? How do we get 30? Can we go to 50%? What would that look like to move forward?
And then, yeah, so that's basically a 1.3x conversion rate.
Yeah, that's right, right. And like to your point before, Tara, like you're seeing 70% conversion, which is fantastic, where referrals are flowing through.
Hmm.
All right, let's keep going. So in this session, we're going to just touch a little bit on the role of partnerships and Jane and the marketing team film was like, let's give some actionable, practical tips. So we're going to spend a lot of time and energy on that around how to prioritize partners and make sure they're not a flash in the pan. So let's get into it. All right. So usually the conversation we're looking at is we want partnerships to do these two things. Yeah. Yes, we want it to drive leads and we want it to drive closed business so we can get that top line growth, but also to protect bottom line costs. So when we're in budgeting and planning season, we've got a few of these projects at the moment where, do we hire a bunch more account executives or, do we try and upskill them or, what could partnerships deliver? Like for our business, if we could get it from 10% to 30%, that'd be fantastic. And that mean that we might be able to drive distribution with and through partners. And I was talking actually to a Kiwi upcoming companies expand in Australia just yesterday. And for them, they don't want to hire a bunch of salespeople. They want to remain profitable. And so they're exploring like what can partnerships deliver to go around it. So in the chat here, it'd be good to know like what do you want from partnerships on your side? Like is it top line, bottom line, or both? And we'll keep the conversation flowing as we flow through. But I think it's important to set the context, right? Last week we're talking to an ag tech cohort, Victoria, and one of the clients there was, well, through building product partnerships, we can expand the value of what we offer. It means we don't have to build it all, so we don't have the engineering costs for it. So sometimes it's for the growth engine on the top line, but sometimes it's also on the bottom end that you can extend the value of it. And Tara, I've been absolutely like saying, well, Firmable's fantastic, but you might want some other tools, and you need to make sure you plug in a HubSpot and around it. Like, what? How do you think about Firmable tools in like a holistic stack of like jobs to be done for the customers that you serve today?
Yeah, I guess we just try to, before getting too into the technology, it's just kind of simplifying like what are the key jobs to be done. And, as a sales leader, or, trying to get to end customers, or if you're a partnerships manager trying to get to partners, you got to start with kind of mapping out your ideal target. So your ICP, or I think you talk to IPP a bit later in the decks. And then you go, okay, well, how do I then outreach to them? I need information. I need mobile. To get cut through. And then it's like, okay, well, when I can get in touch, how do I have a relevant conversation? And then what's the right time to reach out? What are the signals I should be looking for? So I guess I would just be stripping down what are the key jobs that you need to do and then go, well, what tech kind of can plug in and help play a role with either doing that or doing it faster. So it could be around efficiency, productivity, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and like we think about it as, all right, well, what's our core focus? If we're not going to do it, who can we partner with to fulfill or provide that? And then the
Yep.
same on the go-to-market front. I like, well, this is our target market, and then I'll get through to a good definition upcoming on that. So let's do a bit of pulse check with the audience. So Jane's going to throw up a poll here to understand like what percentage of revenue is accurate for your business today. Because one of the key takeaways we want to think about is wherever you're at today, we want to make sure like how can you progress and move along for it, right? So the first one as per here of this is from a recent benchmark study, which you'll all get a copy of after this session, is it depends on the level of partnership maturity. Like Tara mentioned, referrals are coming through and they close really high, but they're still early on in the stage of journey. So it's going to be a little bit less at this stage, where other companies might be sitting over a little bit higher up and, they're looking to get to the next stage as well. Right.
So where we're at, just while we're waiting for the poll results to come through, is where we're kind of seeing about that 15 to 20% of our revenue coming from partners. It was probably actually a bit higher early on. So partners really played a key role for us really getting our revenue growth going. And now we've seen kind of accelerated growth through other channels like outbound as we've invested in SDR team and inbound as well. But I think what's really important to note is not just the attributed portion of revenue from partners, but the unattributed. So a lot of our inbound, which is growing really fast, is actually like brand. So people that have heard about us, they're coming direct to our site. So the role of partners isn't necessarily just for direct attributable referrals. It's also just having advocates in the market spread the word and for people to go, I've heard about Firmable or whatever your business is. And then they kind of come back through direct channels as well. So I think that's been one of our big learnings along the way.
Yeah, and the way we think about it in the common terms in the US for it is if it's leads coming in, it's partner source leads, where you're actually driving qualified leads into your funnel. But the role which plays a bigger one, which we'll talk to more upcoming, is partner influence. Like, what is the role of partners along the customer journey? And so when you're having that conversation, your sales team's like, oh, I saw this webinar, I downloaded this ebook, someone mentioned you the other day. Tara, I think like on our call last week, you mentioned one of the really big unicorn global tech companies you spoke to recently was on the back of, I'd introduced you last month, you'd spoke to in New Zealand, someone else
Mhm.
mentioned you. I mean, they're like, I've got to chat to them,
Yes.
right? And that's
Yeah.
the partner influence. So there's all these touch points well down the funnel
Mhm.
partnerships can deliver. So, Jane, can you just launch the results of the poll so we can talk to them and we'll keep the conversation going? Should pop up on the screen shortly. Alrighty, so once again, just as per this graph, it's quite a blend, right? A lot of you on this call are not yet activating partnerships and getting going. So we'll be able to provide some tangible tips and tricks around how to get it towards the 30% benchmark, because we do know that partnerships typically close faster, which Tara just mentioned. They're usually bigger and they stay longer because they are more qualified. So we'll talk into it a little bit more. The resources one, which we'll get back to as well. We're going to build on that upcoming. And the good news is all of you contributed to that, so we'll be able to keep it going. All right, so for those of you early stage and you haven't, 40% of you said that you're not yet really doing partnerships today. So let's talk around some examples for consideration. So Zeller team in Australia who provide point of sale and financial solutions, when they launched with Officeworks. Why? Because every time you go into Officeworks, you might be a small business customer and be buying stationery or whatever. So they're showing up where the customers are. Now, in the past, this is the traditional model where you sell through, right? Where you've got distribution. It's transactional. It's you sell my stuff, you might take 10, 20, 30%. This is sort of the older model that's just been in play forever. The second one is, if you haven't got started for that 40% cohort, a really easy and light and dirty way to do it is marketing thought leadership partners, right? And what I mean by that, who else has access to your ICP where you might be able to go do some co-marketing, blogs, webinars, events, co-sponsor things together, pool resources, split the cost halfway or a third if you've got three partners involved. And so that's a really easy way to sort of get started from 0 to 1. The most common partnerships is no doubtably referral partnerships to fill the top of funnel, like we mentioned before, right? And you hop into an Uber, you can hook up Spotify if you don't already, and that's a really active and aggressive channel for that one. And then the last one is the integration partnerships. And, HubSpot announced last week that they've got an open AI within their platform. Firmable integrates to HubSpot and a bunch of other platforms for it. And so that means that there's a better together narrative for this in market. And so hopefully this is starting to shape around, what are these buckets for it? Depending on how far you look at it, sometimes there's 14 buckets of partnerships, but this is the four main ones. Tara,
And
what's your view?
yeah, no, I completely agree with this. I guess probably in another emerging bucket that we're seeing in our ecosystem at the moment is kind of the individual influencers. So yes, there's great technology partners or businesses that you can work with for direct referrals, but there's just a lot of great influencers in the space that might, have great thought leadership material, that are running their own podcast, that have 20,000 followers on LinkedIn that are kind of craving their advice on what tools or processes they should be thinking about. So that's an area that we're kind of shifting a bit more focus into, is thinking about who are those individual influencers that we can be working with, and how do we maybe set up a bit more of a kind of affiliate program that kind of caters to their needs, which are different to maybe a business partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people are turning to the personal brand to cut through for trust reasons these days with so much information and AI accelerating the content and all that we just get hit with so much content these days. So I think, looking around your surrounding ecosystem, who can you empower, whether you set up an advisory council around it or work out who could be evangelize your product in market definitely plays a role increasingly.
Hmm.
All right, let's keep on going. All right, so we talked around before. So if these are the main buckets, and 40% of you are yet to get started, from our recent report, which what we sort of see is referral seems to be the main one that we're sort of still seeing in market. Resellers is like the transactional model of what we mentioned before. What I really see as an opportunity is to do a lot more of that co-selling and implementation selling in market. And so, as per your point before, Tara, if your surrounding ecosystem and partners and network are actually actively in conversation, they might not be implementing it around it, but they've got definitely influence through the sort of deal cycle. Keen to get your view, like, with a 12-month lens looking forward,
Hmm.
you mentioned affiliates. Is there anything else you're looking to sort of amplify or double down on with like maybe like a 2-year lens?
Yeah, so definitely affiliates and kind of activating just the broader kind of digital footprint, and people being able to kind of share advice and recommendations towards us. I think also just investing more in um, those direct referral partnerships, because certainly when you get those kind of one-to-one warm intros, they're the ones that convert at the highest rate. And there's a compelling proposition for coming on board as a partner, but then you also need to invest time in nurturing those relationships and trying to get the most out of them, and also giving back as well. So looking at those kind of shared goals and how you can help each other's businesses through co-marketing and other efforts. So that's an area that we kind of want to invest more in going forward too.
Yeah. And it's as simple as this statement. This is like one of our Halo slides we just talked to time and time again, right? So for the 40% of you on the call who are yet to give partnerships a crack, take a moment just to consider this. Like, who else has access to the customers that you want to go after or are talking to? And what can you do, exactly to Tara's point there, around helping them to win? Because if you're able to grow with and through partners surrounding your ecosystem, then you're able to do more. So, on the buckets on the left here, it could be those evangelists, affiliates like Tara mentioned. It could be referral partners. It could be the tech partners. There could be other ones which you haven't considered yet to be able to access your ICP and cut through for those trust reasons for it. So if you're yet to get started in partnerships, the one takeaway for today will just start to map out as who has access to those customers.
Mhm.
All right, well, let's keep going. All right, so picture you've got a view of these are the partners that I want to go after. If only they would provide us a fire hose of customers. Like, what do you actually do now? Once again, Jane wanted me to really fill the boots with some practical advice. So here we go. So firstly, map your surrounding ecosystem. What does that look like in total? Like, who are all your participants that surrounding your customers today? And you've got to look at their role of partners along the journey. If you're looking for acquisition, then you're probably looking at things at top of the funnel or middle of the funnel to drive those referrals back in. And once you sort of work out which partner categories to pursue, which is complementary to your core offering, you really need to sort of just take a moment and consider the internal resourcing that you have and what's required for success. And what I mean by that is, like, who's going to go drive these relationships forward? Who has resourcing capacity to actually, water these relationships, to build upon them, to assess how they can actually win on the other side as well. And recently we've been doing some work with a company who's wanting to crack the agency space, right? Alongside like HubSpot and Shopify. And we got them to go through a motion where they're starting to identify the partners in that space and putting them across this, three-phase framework. Because we want to work with all these partners. Okay, fantastic. But taking a moment to think, like, and chatting to them and sort of say, well, do they actually have capacity to work with us? Are they committed? Like, why would they? And do they have capability? And so we're able to prioritize the partners they want to work with. And how we go from 0 to 1 is working with a select few partners and going deep and documenting the process as we go to build a repeatable motion to be able to grow into, getting those partner referrals or driving those partnerships forwards to get that closed business outcomes of what we want. But what typically happens is companies will do just a wide spray approach and actually just try and see what lands. And the initial approach of the company I'm talking about, they were just really trying to hit up every potential partner and like hoping that they would actually deliver. But they haven't gone through this foundational thinking around, well, just because a partner might sound like really impressive, if they're over capacity and they need to hire people, then you're going to waste like a couple of years of efforts without any ROI. So I think that last one before you go hard in the market is a really critical point, and encourage you to really consider that. So once you will get a copy of these slides at the back of for tomorrow, but like you want to sort of go through his matrix here where you're starting to think about like who are those a good bet for it, right? Are they going to drive revenue for us, or are they going to be a value add, right? Like when I think about like HubSpot for Firmable, the information from Firmable needs to get into a CRM. And so it makes sense to have that good bet on the right that's a value leading indicator as a partner. However, on the left side is, well, picture your company next quarter's got a revenue gap. Well, which of those partners are actually going to deliver for you around it? And then what can we deliver back to it? So with this kind of thinking, Tara, what's your sort of interpretation here? How would you think about this one?
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think uh, sorry, I was distracted because when you were talking about the HubSpot partner example, like we've got a number of HubSpot partners, people that help customers set up and get going with their CRMs, and one of them said, Kieran from Scale Station, as a shout out, he said you shouldn't have a CRM without a data provider, without a clean starting point for your data. So that to me is like a great example of a really good partner fit, because you're both working with the same customers and you're both trying to make them successful. And really, at the end of the day, they're probably not going to be successful without both of your services or platforms or whatever it might be. So, yeah, I think just thinking about that kind of shared goal for the customer and the fit is really important.
Yeah, absolutely right. But like proceeding with partnerships with intention and strategically, not just spraying it out there, right?
Yeah,
Just like
completely.
critical.
Yeah.
And when we sort of did some work last year with Firmable, we were sort of thinking like, well, these are all the jobs to be done, like Tara mentioned before, and we're thinking, okay, well, which partners along the journey for it, right? And if it's not HubSpot directly, it's that it's that customer need 4 and 5, which complements Firmable. So it's HubSpot agency partners alongside to sort of keep the narrative going, because once again, they have access to the network we want to go after.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Last year, I spent some time with Nelson at Partnership Leaders Conference over in Chicago, and he just won the Global Best Partner Program Award for this year's Catalyst. And his learnings was, he was customer led around how he went to go about it, and he was looking to solve more problems, as Tara articulated before. Like, this is our jobs to be done, what we can do, but what other partners can reach to do it. And from there, it's a case of showing, what impact you can make together, and then how do you do more of it. So for those of you, once again, who are getting started in partnerships, how do you have that better together narrative alongside a select few, activate these partners, and then grow into it, before expecting the fire hose of customers to come.
Mm-hmm.
And this is some of Nelson's templates that he has as around is like, well, we often want, this is what we want from partners, and most partner managers in roles in businesses are chasing new logo acquisition, and that's great for a company to sort of say, oh, we want this outcome for it. But the big missing piece is, why would they actually do that, right? If we want intel, we want influence and effectively intros from partners, which would be the holy grail, then we need to do more of the stuff on the left around how we can help our partners to win inversely before we can expect qualified business and close one. Because when we need to consider like what you can offer partners, you need to make sure you've got a really strong partner value proposition. And we spend a lot of time with clients on this side to make sure that they're attracted to work with. Otherwise, you might be able to get that coffee meeting, the beer catch up, a phone call, book a meeting. But if there's no substance for them, if you're not driving value back to them, then they're just not going to prioritize efforts, right? Because you want to be on a C-suite conversation of like, oh, I love working with Firmable. As a partner, we've got an opportunity to do a webinar together. We've got similar ICP. We're going to plan some more events ahead and things together. It makes sense that I'm going to spend time, energy, and effort rather than work on other things which are not aligned to what we're trying to achieve together. So, Jane, back to you. We got the answers before. We'll just, if you can bring up the poll results again, if you can. When we think about the challenge of building partnerships, you look at that, it's astounding that it's measuring and demonstrating the partnership impact, and then the first one, the lack of resources for it. So the way we think about that as a business is a few things. You need to be able to show an ROI of the partnership of where you're heading towards. And there's 2 ways to do it. Unfortunately, so many companies still offer a top down, like partnerships must deliver 20, 40, 60% or something outrageous without much thought to it, without the resources. So if you're looking to activate partnerships, you need to consider, that market mapping, which Firmable is that, has the ability to be able to do, to consider what can we actually get from partnerships over this 6-month, 1 year, 2 year horizon, which will then also inform the bottom one around, well, this is how we're going to measure and demonstrate partnership impact. And then you're able to go back to the business and sort of say, well, if you want partnerships to be successful, this is what we're going to need. We're going to need marketing support. We need customer support teams to, look for opportunities. We need our sales team on board. The best partnerships which we see activate is where they have OKRs right across the business to drive that value proposition of what I said before. Because you really can't just hope that the partnerships can fire. So Tara, on the first point, lack of resourcing, like how do you think about Firmable like at this stage of growth?
Yeah, and I can't actually answer. Hosts aren't allowed to answer the poll, but I would have voted for that being the number one challenge for us as well. I think the key thing that we've done, being early kind of stage in our growth, is think about who are the people that can assist with this. You don't necessarily have to have dedicated resources to get going. We still don't. That's something that we're looking at kind of in the near term though. But so we've just identified a few key people. I know we've got a range of small and large organizations here on the call, but if you're a startup look at how, your founders can get involved, look at how leadership can lean in, look at how you can maybe make it a component of some of your sales team's role to help acquire new partners. And then think about how you can also then nurture, and are there systems or tooling that you can use to help automate and nurture those relationships too. So yeah, that's maybe what I would encourage people to do is don't necessarily wait until you've got dedicated resources to put some effort into it. See where you're gaining traction and also what type of resources you might need to then help grow and scale it further. Because even from where we started to where we are now, the profile of who we would hire is different. I think
Yeah.
it's more of like an ecosystems manager versus, I guess, a more traditional partnership manager, for example, someone that, yes, can manage the referral partners, but also just be a thought leader in the space that's getting out to events, that's spreading the word a bit more organically as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. And the traditional model is it might be founder led, and then it might be sales slash
Yeah.
partnerships role or marketing slash partnerships. The business case rolls out, and then it becomes a partner manager with a broad remit to start off with. And as you get bigger, you might have someone for each of the buckets as you progress and mature.
So I guess we're kind of moving into the last stage of the presentation, just conscious of time, and this is probably the just practical tips around what people can take away, some exercises and tools that they might want to consider to get going. So yeah, if you could take us through that, and then we'll jump to Q&A.
Sounds good. Thanks, Tara. So, like I said before, you need to understand how you fit into the workflows of your ideal customers. Um, there's a story called like the river analogy, and if customers come before you, then they're going to be able to provide leads into you, right? So, for example, if you're using Xero accounting, where I used to work, then all the reporting apps were after the fact. But to have a really healthy, robust file for accountant bookkeeper to have a good conversation, you need data, injection apps where you're doing your receipts and all those sorts of things for it. So you got to consider this and then prioritize those who work closest to you because they're going to have more of the ICP alongside. Quite a logical step, but you want it close to your core of your offering, not too far away. Otherwise, you'll end up wasting a lot of efforts. The role of partners, what we're seeing is that it's not transactional as much anymore, right? And maybe Jane in the chat, you can throw in Jay McBain's profile because he's definitely the global leader in this space of, a lot of the big companies, it's partners contribute, early on for awareness, for decision-making phase, ongoing for support. Some companies that we're working with have got a churn problem. So they say, well, what other companies can we partner with out the back of it in order to reduce that churn, increase lifetime value to go with it. And all of the macro trends and the biggest global companies are doubling down on this real 360-degree holistic approach. So once you sort of work out and validate, and that's a really key word here of what your ideal partner's core focus is, it's not about you, remember, it's about like how do you help your partners to win. You've got to consider like who's responsible within the business. Or at the other partner, this is the partner manager, this is the marketing manager. Well, what do they actually care about? And the conversation yesterday with the Kiwi company expanding in Australia was they're doing some work for the marketing. And I said, oh, well, what do you do when you share content? And they're like, well, they put it in their blog. I said, well, what about that person? How long have they been in the organization? Do they want to get promoted? Do they want some internal recognition? How can you actually help that person to win? Are they measured on MQLs? How is you partnering with them helping the people within? And it's a fantastic growth hack. People always say I'm partnering with huge company this or this company, but it's the people within who are moving the needle where these relationships are formed, and it shouldn't be forgotten.
Mhm.
Because fundamentally it is people within is the unlock for it. And definitely during my Xero era, it was those partners who were helping the Xero partner sales team to win, which were getting the biggest traction, the biggest growth alongside the platform, outside of the partner programs and the evolutions that we had going there. So it's going to be over to you. For a lot of you who are getting started in partnerships, if you really want it to move the needle and get towards that aspirational 30% of revenue from partners, as we highlighted earlier, is you got to take it back to your leadership team of, what can you do to be the partner of choice? And we encourage you to start small and validate and grow with a select few partners. And to Tara's point before, like what partners mean last year compared to now has already evolved in, over the last 12, 18 months. And it'll be different again in a year's time as the business matures and continues to grow. So for these sorts of slides, we'll share them through tomorrow so you got the pack because we want to be able to empower you for your thinking. Now, in terms of some tools that we use here at Hockey Stick and we push out with our clients, one of them is Impera, where you're able to build mutual success plans with your partners around what are you doing next month, what are we doing this month, what's coming up, and I need to sit down with yourself, Tara, and Jane next week around what's next to come for us. Because the idea is you want to unlock organizational buy-in on both sides. Like this webinar itself was working closely with Jane, who's moderating a chat around making sure the content's contextual and relevant to the audience. And what you don't want is you don't want to sign contracts or agreements which are a waste of time. So Impera is a great tool that we use to be able to empower that. The second one is Channel Boost for PRM, which sits alongside CRM software, where you're able to get your partner program stood up and measure those leads alongside your CRM in real time and have all those analytics. It's also got a bunch of initiatives for non-financial incentives. Because if you're sitting here thinking, well, I want to partner with this company, but I need to give them a fire hose of leads, it's not always the case. So there's some tools and tips and tricks within their platform. And then lastly, no surprise, like Firmable is a great tool to be able to access those customers that you want to go after and how to reach them. We presented, last week with an ag tech cohort, and there was a bunch of people there who were like, yeah, I'd love to catch up in the next week. I logged into my instance of Firmable, found their details, called them, and just locked in a conversation to follow because I had access to them, but they're busy CEOs and C-suite people, and I knew that if I could just reach them. So who has access to it? We still use Firmable as a power sales intelligence tool ourselves. So we're nearly at time. We're going to kick into some questions for the audience upcoming, but I want to leave you with a few takeaways for consideration. So we know that Firmable is an powerful sales intelligence tool, but as per those stats at the start of the presentation from Pavilion, what if every team was not just sales and it was enabled through partnerships? So what if you could do marketing with multiple partners every time and get more reach, which will make your marketing team happy? What if your partners are able to sort of solve more customer support issues so you can reduce the impact to your customer support? And what if you're able to nurture and grow these partnerships so you're not as dependent on pure outbound, inbound? I think partnerships got a role to really empower that. And to Tara's point, I love the thought around, when you get that partner hire in, that you're thinking more broadly, right? Around what is the ecosystem actually can unlock for those who are evangelists, affiliates, referrals, strategic partnerships. You're now thinking of that a little bit, broader, and that wasn't on the table last year. And so once again, it's that definition of ecosystem of who has access to the clients you want to go after, right? And lastly, you got to consider, like, we've all got competition in market, and if network is your net worth, and what if your competitors actually start to lock in and do more with your partners alongside you? What's their propensity to want to work with you ahead? So what it does is it's able to build a strategic moat around you. And definitely my time at Xero, I saw this where we had went from 100 to 1200 plus app partners, and some of our competitors at the time wanted to have everything in-house, where we would have our conference and have 100 tech companies out there who are promoting and pushing it out non-stop. We would call this our expanded sales team because we're always talking about it. So it's something that strategically as a business, a lot of the conversation we're having with C-suite definitely sort of leans towards this. So let's close out and then get into some questions. But to kick off with, I want everyone to write down, what are you going to do, right? Action is important always. And as you do that, write that down in your notes. Welcome to throw it in the chat. Tara, over to you. Like, what have we covered today with a 12-month looking lens for yourself?
So I think we're kind of actively working through our affiliate plan at the moment. So we're implementing an affiliate tracking tool like First Promoter, just to kind of get going with the ability to have people spread the word and amplify Firmable. I think we are coming into the new financial year looking at planning and resourcing and budgets and that kind of stuff. So I think just actively kind of working through what resources we're going to need over the next 12 months. It's probably the second one. You put me on the spot. I don't have a third right now. There's lots to do though, so it's probably more working out what are the 10 and then prioritizing what's the third for us.
That's right, yeah, and it goes in stages. So next year will look different again, but more the idea is that you're growing the partner capability, and you might have someone in the seat doing this upcoming ahead, right? Which is exciting. So with that, so that's what we do in market. We come in and build the partner strategy and shape the partner value proposition through our operating system, and the idea is to bring partnerships to life, put a potential working right across the company strategy with a holistic viewpoint. And with that, we do have a gift for everyone who's attended today, which Jane will be sharing some details across forthcoming. So firstly, you'll sort of grab an overview of how we operate with our partner operating system. And also we've recently released our first Partnerships Insight report, which we partnered up with Channel Boost, and also features Firmable as well within there. We're going to be hosting a AI-enabled partnership masterclass in July, so you'll be able to put in an expression of interest. And if you'd like to do a partnership audit and get ready for next FY, ready for execution, we offer that as well. And most importantly, don't forget to take out a trial of Firmable if you're not a user. It's a really powerful tool that's definitely been great for our business increasingly. And now that they've launched in New Zealand, they've expanded capabilities and regions. So it's definitely some exciting technology which continues to move forward. So with that, we'll share some details beyond this one, but I reckon I can probably stop sharing and we can
Yeah, well, we're
touch
pretty
base.
much at the 45 minutes, but if people can hang around for a few more minutes, we'll just answer a couple of the questions that have come through the chat. So, question for you, Brian. Ryan said, what are the red flags to look for when selecting partners, particularly as a startup and kind of early in the journey?
Yeah, you've got to consider that framework before where, what is their capacity, commitment, and capability to be able to work with you around it. Just because someone wants to have a meeting with you doesn't mean that they're actually got any interest right now in the short term to do things with you. So make sure you get that buy-in before you proceed too far down the journey.
Great. Um, and Jason from Timescapes, he's busy trying to educate the WA construction market. I've had a lot of fun working with the construction market in the past with my time at Aconex. But yeah, it's an industry that's kind of long been serviced by traditional partners and suppliers, and so I guess that can make it challenging to kind of find ways in. What are ways to kind of cut through in a space where, the partners maybe are, just happy with the status quo?
Yeah, so a few things on that. Great question is that you want to set up mutual success plans with these key partners. Like, what are we going to do together next month, next quarter? What does that look like once you've sort of narrowed down which partners you want to go about? Like, one analogy I often use on that is, isn't it funny when you go to a conference and you've got your exhibitor booth, you're kind of stuck like a bunch of animals in a pen, and you're all paying money to the conference organizer to access the people coming through the same door. So, for that question, it was like, well, who else has access to your clients left and right? Well, why don't you do a bunch of stuff together? There's so many things. Like this webinar ourselves, we promoted it to our newsletter and socials, as did Firmable. We pushed it out for a better together narrative. So there's a way that you can work together for common goals. Use a mutual success plan would be the tip there.
Right. New question from Phil's come through. So talking about the ROI from partnerships,
Mhm.
and I guess this is probably more in that kind of referral or rev share kind of model. Is it better to front load the offer in the first year and tail off, or is there a better method?
Yeah, you want partners on the journey for you, right? So one of the capabilities of Firmable, and I've got some great resources on this, like what is your TAM, SAM, SOM for your clients, right? But if you're able to work with a select few partners and talk about crossover and what does that look like, you're able to establish, well, what is the service addressable market with these partners we're working with at? So what that means is you're able to present back internally and sort of say, well, we need to get going on this. We can't expect that we're going to have this ROI within 3 months or 6 months, but we've got this huge opportunity if we unlock these partners to be able to build this motion going forward. So realistically, I'd encourage you to have probably like a 1 and a 2 year view of what's possible, and then put the ask back in there around the business and say, well, next year, do we want 5% or 10%, 20% of our revenue from partners? Then we're going to have to invest in this to bring to life.
Great. I think that covers most of the questions that have come through. And just conscious of everyone's time. For those that haven't eaten their prawn fettuccine or lasagna yet, hopefully you can go warm those up and have an enjoyable lunch. But yeah, thanks so much, Bryan. Sorry, we've just had one come through saying they'd like to connect directly if possible. Absolutely. So Bryan and I are always up for kind of new connections and sounding boards and all of that. So absolutely, please do. Great. Well, yeah, thanks again for your time, Bryan. A kind of wealth of information there. And I liked at the end how you just kind of summarized some kind of key questions that people should be answering. Particularly, I know there were quite a few people on the on the webinar today that are kind of early on in their journey. So really helpful to get people going.
Thanks, Tara. I hope it's been valuable for everyone. Enjoy your lunch if you haven't had it yet. And yeah, look forward to keeping the conversation going on.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.